Hello everyone, today's recording date is June 22nd, 2024. I am Michele Tittler from the political organization Endrace-Based Law in Canada, and this is my political partner and research guru, Gerry Gagnon, and he is going to explain another one of the feature stories on endracebasedlaw.com, which really sums up the entire race law issue in Canada. And in this particular episode, it is about on using the term Indian, and Gerry's going to explain all that for us. So hit it, Gerry.
When we started Endrace-Based Law, there was a Ministry of Indian Affairs. A few years later, it became the Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs, and now has been renamed yet again, and now it's the Indigenous Affairs. And there are two ministries now to deal with Indigenous affairs. So we're moving rapidly backwards. Now, I will point out to anyone who's doing research on the internet, every time they change the name of the ministry, they come up with a whole new set of URLs. And the old URL doesn't direct you to that content under the new ministry's name. You have to go search for it yourself. Now, whether this is deliberate or just complete amateurishness on their part, I'll leave it to you to decide. But when you're looking for stuff and you run into that problem, okay, there's no shortcut solution. You have to just search again for that document.
Or you can go to endracebasedlaw.com and endracebasedlaw.ca.
And I'm having to update old links because of this every time they change the name of the ministry. Anyway, so today's discussion is on terminology. When we began, there was a Ministry of Indian Affairs, and we used the term Indian in our original posts and commentary, for which we got a storm of abuse from all kinds of places. And so we have, in fact, Indians are just one of the three groups that now comprise Aboriginal peoples in Canada. As of the 1982 Constitution and the Supreme Court ruling that decided that a certain class of mixed-race Aboriginals, known as Métis, would also now be Aboriginals. So there are Indians, the Inuit, who used to be called the Eskimo, so there's a name change in there too, and the Métis. And so these terms, Aboriginal was becoming the norm, and then also appeared the term First Nation. Now, there are no First Nations in the treaties, there are no First Nations in the BNA Act 1867, there are no First Nations in legislation until very recently. So the term, it has a connotation, the first. There's a deliberate reason for using this term. And it's a politicized term, it's not a legal term.
Yep.
And so when you see it, understand the manipulation that's behind the use of this particular term. It's very subtle and it's very effective, and the federal government has accepted it and uses the term. They use it in Parliament now too. But in fact, the only two terms in the Constitution are Indians and the Aboriginal peoples in the 1982 Constitution, which include Indians, the Inuit, and the Métis. The rest of it is made up, including the term Indigenous. Now, this originated with the United Nations and has effectively weakened, particularly the Western nations, who were, quote, colonizers, as if the whole world hasn't been colonized, quote unquote. But it's particularly affected the Western nations, this indigenous movement. And our federal government, while initially refusing to sign on to it, did a flip-flop, unfortunately, under Prime Minister Harper, who was completely opposed to it in the beginning.
He was a globalist in the end.
And much like Pierre Elliott Trudeau did a complete flip-flop where the Aboriginal issue is concerned, signed Canada on to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP, as you see in its letters. That will be a separate podcast for sure, because that's a big topic as well. But we're just tracing how the language, the terminology has evolved here.
I need to jump in,
the politicization of it.
Because this is cultural appropriation. You cannot have 600 plus firsts Okay, they are tribes, 600 plus tribes. You can't have 600 plus first. That's not what the word first means. It's a complete misuse of the word first. It's also a complete misuse of the word nations. Like nations, to be a nation has a specific set of standards you have to pass. Like you have to have borders, you have to have a currency, you have to have a constitution. The only people who ever were a nation were the Iroquois. So, I mean, just the two terms together, First Nations, in and of itself, is like such misuse of these two words.
Okay,
Thank you.
no, that's fine. And so today's particular podcast on using the term Indian was written by a lawyer from Northern Ontario named Peter Best. He has been on this issue from the beginning. He had done treaty rights cases and Aboriginal cases as a lawyer, and to his credit, saw very clearly the folly and the inevitable backwardness of the approach that's being taken. He wrote a series of essays that he posted on the internet over a period of several years that have resulted in a book called There Is No Difference. There Is No Difference by Peter Best. It's linked on our site, but you can also search for it and find it easily.
I didn't know that.
Okay, and I want to personally thank him for all of his efforts in this regard. They're very well thought out and well written essays. The man knows how to use the English language, and not just in a lawyer sense, but in a philosophical sense. And there is a philosophical issue underlying this whole subject. So anyway, I'd like to just read some excerpts from one of his essays called On Using the Term Indian. Indian is the precise, legal, and denotative term for what is in fact a purely race-based legal category of persons in Canada. It's in the title of the Indian Act and used throughout that statute. It's in the Constitution of our country, referring to that class of Aboriginals who inhabit southern Canada. The other two legally defined types of Aboriginals are Inuit and Métis. It's used by our courts in their many decisions emanating out of this burgeoning area of law. And yes, it grows and grows and grows. The legal industry being the prime beneficiary of the whole Aboriginal industry.
That's why we're called endracebased law.
Indeed, in an important court decision, Keewatin, the court extensively discussed what it clearly regarded as the important and worthy concept of Indianness. To me, it's offensive, yes, and counterintuitive to our basic civic values that we should still have and want to permanently keep any category of Canadians defined solely on the basis of their race, and who would possess a whole series of special legal rights and entitlements based solely on the mere fact of their race, the mere accident of their birth. Canada's ultimate goal in this regard should be for us all to have no need or desire to have the word Indian in our Constitution, in any of our statutes, or to be a meaningful legal term generally. Canadian history at least provides us with an explanation and a reasonable excuse for the original legal separation of Indians from non-Indians. But now, there is no reasonable excuse for our courts, our governments, and governing classes generally to further entrench and expand this inherently illiberal and segregationist concept into our laws and civic life. But even though they have the best of intentions, sometimes, that's what they're doing. Therefore, in order that the essentially segregationist and benignly racist nature of this case be brought to the fore and kept there, in order that the wrong and discomforting nature of what is happening be not just read, but felt, I will be using, and we have used, as if it were a verbal hair shirt, that precise legal racial term, Indian. If the reader feels uncomfortable seeing and reading the word everywhere because it sounds racist, then good. That's the point. It is inherently racist. and as such, it's inherently wrong that it's in our Constitution, statutes, and court decisions the way it is. For the same reason, clarity of unpleasant thought, I will be trying to avoid as much as possible the use of those other sanitized, progressive-sounding terms now being used to denote Indians. Terms such as natives, elders, urban elder, Aboriginals, Indigenous, and First Nations. The last, a complete recent fabrication, nowhere to be found in the historical record or in the wording of any of the original treaties.
It's a ruse.
These are soft, vague, very emotive, relatively modern terms. They're politically inspired and biased terms, connotative of pre-fall Edenic perfection, poorly supported in law or history, favored and used by governments, the media, academia, and by the Indian industry generally, all of whom use the word Indian only when, usually for legal or technical reasons, they absolutely have to. These terms all have the deliberate effect of masking the fundamentally, albeit unintentional, and benign, racist, segregationist nature of the current situation. They also have the Orwellian effect, as most mandated politically correct terminology does, of clouding clear thought and deliberately constraining and debasing free speech and public discourse on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Best.
That was awesome. That was truly awesome. You're right. He has a command for language, and it is not benign, and it is not unintentional.
He was trying to be generous to the do-gooder races.
The United Nations using our natives to destroy our Canadian sovereignty, period. That's great, Gerry. That was really great. Is that it?
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, there is more under that on this post on the page. There's more material below it.
At endracebasedlaw.com. Check out, that's where all the feature stories are, on .com. And the daily news stories are on .ca. And we're going to be doing live streams every Friday for the, if we can, for all the daily news stories. We want to try to do something for you guys to interact with us. So check out all these stories on endracebasedlaw.com and .ca. They're both linked to each other. And start checking us out on Rumble and BitChute, and start getting involved.
And everywhere, we're everywhere.
Yeah, and get involved in the live chats that we're in, because we're trying to collect people to help us rewrite the Constitution. No small task. And to get the petition signed to end race-based law. So, and if we can rewrite the Constitution, we can just remove race laws from it. But you know, there's too many people in Canada from all around the world. Every race on the planet is here, and we all make it work. You know, this is just, it's a weird thing going on, that only one race now has suddenly been chosen. And as if there aren't indigenous European people, you know, so they don't call the European people indigenous. They're allowed to be invaded. Hey, Gerry, the filter went back on me.
Well, there you go.
See, this is the UCAN thing, and now he's all contrasty, and I've got the really soft face. Well, that was fair. Thank you, UCAN. It only goes on one face. Anyway, we'll sign off now. Stay tuned for more videos, and get involved.
Definitely.
Get involved with the live chats that we're going to be putting up, and just with the conversation in general. We need to talk about this subject and race-based law.
And thank you for spending this time with us.
Mm-hmm.